Member Trotter, sorry, here. I'll get your name one of these times. Here, member Pascal,
Here.
member Sukas. Here. Member Fisher, member Naples is here. If we could stand for a moment of silence, pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, God, liberty, justice for all. Okay, first order is that we need to approve the agenda for today's meeting. I will need a motion on the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Great. Are there any comments to the agenda? I hear none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No opposed. Public comments. I see no members of the public in the meeting room. Minutes. We need to consider and approve the Finance Committee meeting from September 20th, 2023. Need a motion? Motion.
Second.
Great. Motion by excuse me, I'm sorry. Motion by Mr. Trotter, second by Ms. Pascal. Any discussion regarding the minutes from that meeting? Any updates, any edits? I see none. Motion to approve the minutes from the September 23rd meeting. Approved. Okay. Motion passes, no objections. Board, Steve.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick update where we are budget wise. We're continuing to work on the budget. We were supposed to present last week and we did not. We've still got some pretty large gaps that we're trying to figure out how we're going to fill, as well as just making sure that we have everything kind of right and going through. And I'm doing a scrub one more time just through the budget to make sure that we've kind of picked up everything that we're supposed to and do that. And so we're doing that. We're still trying to figure out specifically related. We're really having a hard time projecting what our income is going to be next year related to LST tax and real estate tax, just because watching the market, watching what's happening. And I just want to make sure I have that pretty close and see where we are. I think that we're going to see a little bit of an uptick on the LST tax, and I'm just wanting to see if my numbers are right, working with the developer on the number of people we think will be employed across the street, which will help some, but both those numbers are significantly down from prior years. And we've talked about that already. So, and because we're a week early, we don't have a financial report because we're still going through getting the closing done for the month. And so we'll have either 2 in November or something like that for you. And so that's where we are.
Is it too early even to speculate that a tax increase for next year is inevitable? Would you want to speculate on that or not?
I don't want to, I mean, first of all, that's not for me to speculate on. That's something that the board would decide on. You have cost of living increases. Would that be a part of what they consider? I don't know. So that's kind of where we are. There are some increases that we have no control over. But for example, I would tell you in the police budget, we've built in all the increases, but because of some of the retirements, we've actually, I think the police budget's going to come in a little less than the year before. So, but we've also figured in all of their increases that are contractual. So You know, to speculate, yes, to say this is what we're going to be, I just am not in a position to do that.
How long have you been here, Steve?
How long have I been here? 8 years.
In those 8 years, on average, what's the tax increase been?
Probably some, if I did it on average, I would think we're somewhere between 1.5% and 2% with, I mean, I'm obviously doing this off the top of my head. We had a couple years that were 3s. But most of the years have been either 0 or like somewhere between 0 and 3. I don't think we've ever had a tax increase more than 3 since I've been here.
Less than inflation rate.
Less than inflation rate, yes.
Well, inflation was low for a lot of those years. In
For the
fact,
early-
it was negative at 1.2.
Yeah, I don't think it was negative while I was here. I think it was before I came that it was negative, but maybe 1 year it was negative. Most of the years it's been actually somewhere about 1 to 3% because I've actually tied the non-uniform raises to the inflation rate most years. And we've, you know, that's why I kind of know what that is. And
How do we keep a budget then if over the long haul, we're below inflation? How do we,
Well, I think part of the thing that we benefited from obviously is the new build out. I mean, and that's where that's where the challenge is that, as you all know, that new build out is kind of starting to slow. And most people are happy about that. I think they feel like we've kind of built out all that we should. I mean, there's still some properties to be built out, but I've been talking with that developer. I don't see anything happening quickly. Who owns the largest pieces of property in town. We still have the Stony Knoll project that's up on the was that Wayland Road up there, I think is what it's considered at that spot. That project, there's 17 new homes that are going to go in, but there'll be some impact to us, but not a major impact. The major impacts are pretty much, I think, unless the other developer who owns the other properties in town does something, I think you're pretty much seeing where we are for probably the next several years. And what I would say is this year, I think we're having probably a pretty good increase in just real estate tax, just because of what's happening across the street. I think we're going to pick up about 200,000, maybe 250,000 in revenue from that. And maybe a little bit more. So I'm just watching that. But that's kind of where we are.
if inflation stays above 3%, let's say for the next years. Even if it's coming down and it's still above 3%.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode well for budget.
Well, I mean,
If you have certain costs.
yeah, there are certain things that are tied to inflation, or even like sometimes, I mean, I'll be honest with you, there were years that the police contract was better than inflation, and so, their increases was more than what the inflation rate was. So, yeah, I mean, that's always a challenge. And I say that looking at our budget, and, we probably have about a $10 to a $12 million budget, depending on our year, and what's going on. And in most years, we're probably looking somewhere around 40% to 50% of our budget is salaries. So it's heavily dependent on what we're paying people. But that's not uncommon when you're in a service industry, and that's what we are. We're a service providing. I mean, that's what you would hope would be the case, because we're providing services.
Great. Next item on the agenda is new business. I had nothing penciled in at this point. I think we'll move over to old business and the draft recommendation that was put forth prior to this meeting. But maybe what we could do is just give everybody a chance just to kind of comment how they feel about what's been posed at this point. Obviously, anything that they suggest that they think should be added, should be deleted, should be changed. So maybe just to walk across the members, I'll start with Lisa. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay. I like what you did. I think it's simplified and gives flexibility. And sort of highlights the main points around what we found. And the one thing I keep circling back is we know that the impervious coverage is greater for the tax exempts. And I know that question of, when we're thinking about how to spread this cost equitably, that keeps coming back. And I just can't help to think, even though it is true that the percentage of those parcels versus the rest are just not significant enough to make that a major issue. So that's just my overall sentiment. But I really like what this says. I think it captures everything nicely. So
Great.
Larry, does that mean you would want the nonprofits to participate in this?
honestly, I think that it's a little bit de minimis because the dollars associated with it are just not dramatic.
You don't want.
Either way, I don't think it should be something that
Why is it?
holds us up. If the courts are deciding, I don't want to wind up in a legal battle over it.
Yeah, that's what I was
All right,
thinking.
I get that.
It's
It's
spending
just
dollars chasing nickels.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so that may be a better way to say it. It's just the money, the
Yeah, the
dollars.
equity issues, it screams, but. You look at it. Cost benefit. What do you say, Larry?
On that particular thing, if this, is it really de minimis? The not-for-profits, the number of not-for-profits are small, but their land area
That's correct.
is large.
Relative, mostly,
Well, they have big properties,
proportionately big.
right? But, one of the issues with that is probably the person that has one of the biggest properties is Eric Williamson. And that's maybe one that's contributing less than some of the other not-for-profits that are all pavement.
Right.
So that's, if it will keep us out of court, it's probably the way to go. Because if we get it in court, we're not going to get any. I think the concept is good, whether the numbers are the right numbers. Quarter acre, is that the quantity and the dollar amount? That can be worked out by somebody else, but overall, I think it's putting something on the table and let them decide. So I think it's good.
Right.
It's a good start.
So I would, two things. One is these nonprofits, and my kids went to DC, so I'm at the very least, we should make them justify that there isn't runoff from their properties. So they're not compounding. If they can say that, then okay. But I'm wondering, so that was one. The second is, why did we choose $1 million? Because I'm sure people can push back. Why did we come up with that?
You want to go
Otherwise,
first,
I think we got
or you
it.
want to?
Well, the million came up because we gave a presentation to the Board of Supervisors that listed out all the projects that were coming up. And the number was significant for immediate projects. I can't remember what it was, like 5 million or 8 million, something like that. So we figured a fraction of that to ease into this project as opposed. to that.
That makes sense.
Secondly, impervious is not, in my view, has nothing to do with any of this. We shouldn't be comparing runoffs of people because we all contribute runoff. The minute you say to a tax exempt like Episcopal, all right, show us that you're not running off. Well, then the person that owns a quarter-acre lot is going to say, wait a minute, I don't run off anything either because I collect it or something. And then it becomes a morass of who's running. The issue isn't who specifically is contributing to this flooding or that flooding. It's a township issue. Our streets are an issue. It's flooding regardless of whether you have impervious or don't have impervious. I have 6 acres of non-impervious, basically, that's contributing a lot of runoff. So I should pay. I'm wondering if we shouldn't add something that says, to Lisa's point, which is, the committee encourages nonprofits to make a contribution. Because I'm thinking, think about this. If you, how many acres does Garrett Williamson have or Episcopal have? Anybody know just off the top of their head?
Isn't the number 43?
It's probably about 250.
What's that
Episcopal,
one?
I think is down around 9 something.
89 acres? So 89 times 4 times 45, so that's $16,000. And it's a significant thing. So I would add a number 6 as I'm hearing everybody talk that says, the committee encourages the board to reach out to nonprofits, also contribute to the flood control fund.
So would that be a payment in lieu of taxes? I know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Basically.
and that's an agreement that they can,
And if one of these other
Yeah, that's a
cases
great idea.
comes out against the nonprofits, the Westchester case, if that comes, then you can go ahead and add them. to the
that's a good idea. I like
I don't know.
that.
I thought-
My comment is, Alex, thank you very much. Alex was the one who focused, drilled down to get to this point, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree 100% with the issue of equity. Where folks are gonna come in and say, wait a minute, what about St. Anne's? Look at the runoff in St. Anne's, so. There's gonna have to be some level of acceptance that there's going to be a backlash on this. Especially if we go for the milling, whether or not, obviously, what the board does. That's TBD.
It's just, I'm just doing some quick math again. Yeah, my tax bill is up $1,000 just on this alone.
Right, the township
6
tax.
acres times
Yeah.
4 is 24 times 45 inches. So, yeah, those of us that have a lot of acreage are gonna be paying a lot more, but the other option is to do what we had in the footnote, which is the $180 per parcel, but then you're shifting the burden
Yeah.
to the people that have
To the
small
wrong-
lots
yeah, to
and
the wrong-
helping out people like me.
Quick question, the point I made last month. What percentage increase is that in your township taxes? Without you disclosing anything confidential, which is really confidential, because we look it up.
Oh, me personally?
Yeah,
Oh, it's significant. Much do I honestly, I pay a few thousand in township taxes, so it's gonna be probably 25%, 20%.
right, and for me, it would be I've got an acre and a half. So it would be, and I pay roughly $1,000. So that's, again, the point I was making last month is that even without whatever the Board of Supervisors is going to do for a tax increase, the larger landowners in the township are going to have a significant increase in township taxes, which we just have to be cognizant of. So mine would be 3 times. No, so an acre and a half is 6 times 40, is that?
About $600.
Yeah, over my 1,000. that I'm paying today before Leonard and the supervisors do anything.
Well, the other way to do this is you put it in the tax, right? We could just put it, just say to the Board of Supervisors, we recommend just jack the taxes up on everybody, regardless of property size. Then that's to get $1 million. It's a big tax.
That was a 16, we figured that out. That's a 16%
That's a
increase
giant tax
across the board.
So the next thing you do is you say, all right, if it's a flood control issue, who should pay more? The people that have more land, and that's how it works out. It's tough.
I don't
I don't
doubt.
know how we-
I don't doubt, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I'm just saying it's a psychological barrier for the supervisors to, and because we did, Stephen, when, you remember the work we did 4 or 5 years, when was the township reassessment? Or the county reassessment?
2020.
2020.
So 3 years ago, I worked with Rich and Steve to look at the impact of how many people's taxes went up, how many people's taxes went down, because you remember it was net neutral. But at the end of the day, there were more people, I think, with taxes that went up.
Well, I think what we found was that people who had been here a while
Yes.
and their properties were older
In the
in
older
the
side,
township, they most likely had more of an impact than those who had been here less time. Because when they did the reassessment, they were looking at bringing all values to all properties to the same level. And the whole reason for the reassessment was the issue that the new property owners were arguing that they were paying a disproportionate amount of taxes compared to people who had been here longer. And so that was the reason for that. And yeah, and you were right. It did impact a lot of larger property owners because a lot of the older homes were sitting on, like, that's where the value change was,
Exactly.
was mostly experienced in that way.
Right, and I think that, Leonard or the board or somebody should just take, wherever you got if there's a listing of every parcel and just look at the math of, okay, this times this equals this, and see what percentage of residents are being impacted, how is it distributed among people, because there will be disproportionate impacts. And the other question I wanted to ask is, how are you treating condominiums?
As discussed, that you were looking at.
Yeah, so I've
We
been
have a
looking.
whole issue with the HOA.
There's a whole issue with HOAs and with condos and just in how they're designed. In most cases, the open space and condominiums and in HOAs is belong to the HOA. And because it belongs to the HOA, it also falls as tax exempt. And so that's one of the challenges. Like if you look, particularly like where I live at Hunter's Run, most of the land, I mean, I own less than 5 feet out around my house kind of thing. And so when I look at that, it's like, for me, it's incredibly favorable to do this because then I'm not paying, but then the HOA is not paying on the open space that's there because it's considered tax exempt. So we are looking at that. I don't know that we can treat them differently. If we're saying all tax exempt are not going to be taxed, we can't all of a sudden put them into a category where they are. I think we would be in court again over that issue. I will say that the one thing that we are looking at, and this is kind of still current, and I'm still running through this, and I've sent some documents over to our solicitor. There may be a way to address this nonprofit issue by putting this into the municipal authority's role instead of putting it into the township's role. And the issue there is some belief by some legal folks who have said that if you move it from the township to the municipal authority, it's no longer a tax. And so that's the question that's there. And so I am keeping running that in the background. I just haven't gotten I haven't gotten through all the channels yet to determine whether or not they think that there's a safer ground to land on. Nobody has challenged the municipal authority approach yet in court. So it's not like there's real court documents, but there is an argument, I think, that could be had that when the municipal authority does it, their only way to do it is by fee. And they just have to do it and say, I'm providing a service.
So this is equivalent of water and sewer as it relates to
It is.
exempt property.
Yeah.
Otherwise, real estate tax exempt properties.
Yes, exactly.
But for those of us that don't have sewer or water, we wouldn't be on the list.
Well, no, everybody, I think you would argue that you're providing a service. If we're calling it one, that we're going to provide a service of sewer, we're going to provide a service of stormwater to the community. Everybody benefits when we do stormwater in the community, and I think that would be the argument. I don't know how that's going to work totally. I have some questions, just like you asked. If I don't put stormwater in front of your house and yet I charge you, is that a fair assessment? And that's actually the argument that was had by the Westchester case.
Yeah.
It was not an issue that said, if it was not an issue if you provided something for us, the issue was you didn't provide something for us. And so therefore, how come am I billed? And so that becomes the issue. And
John, to your point, though, if you look at situation today, independent of this fee, if there are properties that are legally dancing with we're exempt, that's a current issue for both the school board as well as the township. So this overlaying a fee isn't going to exasperate or change that issue. There's still going to be the same impetus as to what does the taxing authority believe? Is that appropriate? Is that not appropriate? You're going to challenge. So I don't see this as causing a further, it's just going to be piling on top of what is a current issue.
As to your condo question, that was already addressed in here under number 2. And it says, for example, $45 for lot sizes from 0 to 0.25. So if you don't have a lot size, if your lot size is 0, you're a condo, you're paying the minimum, $45. Steve is also paying, let's say, unless his house is massive and more than a 1/4 acre in size, he's going to pay at least $45. So everybody is contributing at least somehow. Anytime you do any kind of tax or fee, there's some inequities that are going to happen, but I think we covered it, for the most part. But they could always reject this. The board could just reject this. Say,
Yeah.
we're not going to do this. It's fine. I mean, then it's up to them, then it's on them.
Well, that's one of my questions to Steve. How much ARPA money's left? Are they going to?
well, I mean, look, so the ARPA money we're going to have spent by the end of next year. I mean,
Right.
that's the reality. If we don't spend it, we have to give it back. So I'm telling you, we're going
We're
to
spending it. We're spending
next year.
it. Yeah.
And so that I don't think, I mean, and there's a little, I think there's 900,000 or something like that in the ARPA
So
money.
it's whittling down, right?
And we have 2 projects that I know will probably spend all that and probably more. I really would see this money being spent on probably doing 2 things. One, going in and really determining long-term, if this is an acceptable approach to the fee, making sure that we're set there and and make sure we have it right and doing it correctly. And then 2, the second piece would be going through and really laying out like what all the projects specifically are, getting solid numbers so that we can take the next steps. My thought on this is that the number is so large. I mean, we've talked about this. We know it's at least 20 million, probably closer to 40. That this would probably be a multiple borrowing with using this money as potentially the debt payment for that. if we're going to do some of these projects, because, for example, a neighborhood project is about 6 or 7 million, the one that's just behind me. And if we're gonna, Heights, so, I mean, if not, we have to wait 6 years to collect the money to do the project. I don't know that we can continue to wait. And can you continue to get the fees? I understand the goal is to pay as we go along. That's always my favorite, because I think I hate paying interest on monies that we borrow. But I don't think we're in a position to raise $6 million to go out and do a project right now. At least I don't know how we are.
I think one of our goals in being tasked this, we're making a recommendation on something that we think can be implemented. And it may end up in court, but it's less likely. All the other ones we know are going to be in court. And again, if, you know, what John's saying, they can change the number. Well, it doesn't have to be $45, or they can change the lot sizes. But, you know, again, one of our goals is do something. And here's something you could do, we think you could do next year. The only other thing that we think you can do next year is millage. Is real estate.
That's a constant. They know that.
Yeah,
But yeah, the nice thing about the way it was set up, I thought, Ed came up with this, was like list this separately on the tax bill.
Yeah,
which gives
absolutely.
them sort of cover to say, look, there's our basic tax is this, and we're not gonna raise it anymore, or it's only gonna go up 2% or 3%. And then there's this other one that's different for each person depending on your property size, but there's at least some cover there to say it's not, if you want to call it a tax or a fee, it's not part of the millage when they look at how much did taxes go up and where, right? For most people, $45, that's most people, or $45 or $90 isn't gonna move the needle too much on the percent tax increase.
Yeah,
It will for people like me, but there's fewer of us.
that's
Right?
one of the gaps that we had here. If we had really good, obviously this hasn't been modeled. But if we knew going in that using a quarter acre, that would fall upon, pulling up right there, 45% of the population in the township, the property owners in the township would pay $45. Then I think you kind of pass a big hurdle in terms of, okay, the other property owners, a fairly good likelihood, they're a little more affluent and probably be not happy, but okay with public communications aside, but so I'd love to have that number going in, because I think that's going to be one of the questions. How many lots will be affected by $45?
Every lot.
Yeah, I
Every
apologize, said it
single lot.
wrong. No, I said that wrong. I meant how many lots would pay $45 in relationship to the total lots in the township. I had that number going in. With 60%, that's an even better answer. Hopefully it's not 20%. And Steve, I'm presuming we can't pull that out of the air.
Well, I'm trying to pull it right now.
And that's discussion. I didn't want to put that level of, I'd like to be ready when this is in front of the board, because they're going to fire out about that.
And what's the scheduling?
We did talk last week, Stephen, what's the total of our tax bills? I'll let him do his math.
I'm sorry, go ahead and ask me the question.
What's the total tax collected by the township today?
6.4, somewhere between 6.2 and 6.4 million. I mean, I'd have to look at it right in front of me, but I want to
The
say
real estate tax. portion.
real estate tax portion is about 6.3, I actually think. Because I'm projecting it maybe almost 6.3 if it's 6.2, but it's right there.
So. Ceteris paribus, the taxes are gonna go up by 16% in the township if we raise $1 million.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that one we knew. That was one of the first numbers Rich ran.
That's one of the,
What does it mean?
we got projects we gotta pay for. I mean, that's.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and now, and those budget, the cost estimates that were done are over 3 years old without the recent inflation and all the other factors. And there's no good surprises. So that's where Steve is in terms of, we're well into the 8 digits.
Again, this is a concept. At $45, maybe the first year they want to do, $10, $20. Just like Steve said, in the first year, what are we gonna be spending the money on? So do we need $1 million in the first year?
Well,
Well, I think also if you're looking at doing the bond. Then you could look at a project like that $6 million project.
Right.
We raise X amount of dollars each year. And that's paid off in a certain period. Another one. Model that out.
debt service.
So,
Yeah.
so very similar to what the municipal authority did in its project. The municipal authority borrowed 33 million, went out and did their project. I mean, it's costing $60 million at the end of the day because we have to pay for. Sorry, I'm doing two things at the same time. You're paying.
So the municipal authority.
But- So the municipal authority, what they've done to for those who have the service, there's now a fee that's in there, that's a debt service fee,
Yeah, my
which is
wife
very
knows.
similar to this concept that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
is that, that's what's covering, and it's, I want to say it's like the first 2 years, it goes up for 5 years. The goal was so that it was not, it was a progressively increasing to what it needed to be covered by those who are in the authority. And the idea that that would be paid off, I think it's a 30-year note, of which we've already are 3 years, 4 years in. And so we started this process, and I'm covering the first 3 years by the infrastructure fees that we're collecting on the expansion. And so that's how we're covering that debt to get to where we need to be. And I think it ends up being somewhere around $250 a year that people are paying just for debt service over whatever their basic fee is.
Right.
And so on some level, this is a similar concept. The difference is this fee, instead of being spread it is spread over EDU. And so it's equivalent dwelling units. So everybody who lives in a house has one. But if you're in an office building that has 6 EDUs, you're paying 6 times that number, whatever it is. And so it's the same concept that we're trying to accomplish here. I just did
Can I add
quickly.
one thing on that?
Huh?
Can I add one other thing?
Yeah, sure.
There's also one of the options you should look at on that is because there are wealthier people in this community. If they're paying $250 for this, give them a discount if they pay it all up. So if you're doing we did a project at Applebrook, irrigation. It was X amount of dollars, but you could pay the whole thing up front, your portion, done with it. A lot of people took that option. That was a win-win. Carrying costs were less. People that had the money just dumped it in and happy to get it over with.
What, on 10 million, if we did a 10 million borrow right now, what would the debt service be on that? Just give me a rough, pull it out of the air. 10 million bucks, current municipal bond rates. What would be the debt service?
Over how long of a period?
That's typical.
20 years?
20 years.
Isn't that the answer?
No, no, the question is, does the million come?
No, it's. Oh, we got.
If I did it over 10 years. About 2.3 million a year, probably.
Over 10, yeah, but then
Over
when you
10
stretch it
years.
out.
If you stretch it over longer, it would take
In
it.
a 30 years, probably like.
The million makes sense.
So
You
if
could
you
use,
borrow, if you borrow $10 million. Staying over 10 years, that's 2 million a year, that you're paying at 20 million.
It's at the current interest rates, which are closer to about 5.5, even on
Municipal.
municipal. If it's spread over that length of time, yes, because like the example, we went in with about a 1.5%, 2% interest rate for the bonds for the municipal authority. And it was 33 million over a 3-year period, and or over a 30-year period, and we're spending almost 60 million to pay it back. So it's
Over 30
almost
years.
double.
But that's
Yeah.
over 30.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
Yeah, I
ran
get
that.
it, yeah,
I mean, it would be a little bit better than probably what I said.
right.
But it's about 1,150,000, I think over 20 years. And I'm doing real rough numbers,
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah,
I'd have to sit down with I mean, there's a lot more to this than just throwing it off the
Sure.
top, but
I need the T value.
yeah, I mean, I have to do some work at it. And I don't deal with that every day, so. But just to give you an idea, 42% of the properties would be at the lower
at the
amount.
lowest, at the.
And then
That's good.
the next group up, which would be paying double that amount. Is another 18%. So 60% or your properties and less would be paying. Would be
Yeah, I got
paying,
it. I got it.
would be paying less than.
Well, I knew the analysis that Rich did sorry, Steve, on assessed value. I knew
Yeah.
the relationship of assessed value was disproportionately at the low end.
Yeah, so I will say this, the number that I'm coming up with based on what I know today, and I have some more scrubbing to do. I was at $49, not 45, to get $1 million. Just so you know, based on when I started taking out, because there's roughly 18% of our acreage is taken out
Yeah, yeah, between the roads and the
Yeah.
exempts.
between the roads and the exempts.
yeah, that's important though, because 60%.
They vote.
You know, but also, I mean, the other number was 180 per lot. So
Yeah.
for 60% of people.
With the deal we got.
Yeah, you got.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Makes
a
sense.
percentage of that 40% are the Steves of the world. Because the people in the associations will tend to have.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah, they have a small footprint.
And, you know, so you have some, you know, listener is going to be part of that. They're
Yeah.
400, not the whole 400, but.
Well, most of the 400, there's probably
Yeah,
is
probably
400 because
there.
there's 449 homes.
Acre lots. So it looks great, but I think
Wait,
gotta
no,
put it out there and then they can figure it out.
it looks great, but it actually is great because a lot of those homes that are townhomes, they're sitting on less than a quarter acre.
Right.
So they're paying $45. So in the aggregate, we do all right.
Yeah.
They're,
They're subsidizing.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. They'll have lawyers to tell us about this. Alex.
You know,
And the alternative is to do nothing.
the
That's-
alternative, no, the alternative is to just jack the taxes up
Absolutely.
by
Right.
16%.
Right.
know what?
And then firestorm.
I'm happy with it because then I end up paying less. If that's how if they want to come in with their lawyers, cool. You know, we'll just do it based on a millage increase and that nobody will be happy.
Bottom line, something has to be done
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Any other commentary? All right, Steve, what I'm thinking is I can slot in a suggested number 6, be a pilot that we've talked about.
Mhm.
And I can reissue that to all. I'm just thinking though, we can't have reply all. So what we're gonna need to do is if anyone has a reply comment, they'll need to come back to me. And then I will reissue the revised. So we won't run afoul of the.
Yeah,
Can I
well,
make it easier? Can I make it easier?
Yeah.
Let's just vote on this. But that number 6, I assume you're gonna present this at the
Yeah.
board. Add that at the board meeting, just make.
Okay,
it a
we'll
public.
do it all.
Yeah,
We'll do it all.
Plus you'll have your data.
well, I mean,
this is a concept.
and
This is just a concept.
And the other thing is, if you want to add number 6 today, you can add number 6. You don't have to have the exact wording, but if you have the basics of what you're wanting to say as a group, you add number 6 right now. And you can go ahead and make that decision. Like, there's nothing that keeps you from doing that on the floor here. If you want to say, we would recommend to the board to go back to the non-taxing properties and let them know what their amount would have been had they been participating, and request that they consider contributing, is what I think you're trying to say. You can add that and we can go from there. The one thing that,
Community good,
excuse me,
to the community good.
to the community good. The one thing that I haven't figured into this, and I still need to, is we have approximately 150 properties that have done BMPs, best management practices. And I know the concept is that this is not a storm water, but a flood control. What I need to find out legally is if I'm playing with words, or whether we can do that and not have impact.
You're not playing with words, because we have flood, regardless of who did what best management practices. The flooding issue is a township issue. So if you have a flooding issue down here around this area, I live on the other side of town, right? So then my argument would be, well, I'm not contributing to the flooding right here. I'm not gonna pay. Let those residents deal with it. That's not the concept. This is the same concept as street lights and street signs and things for the benefit of the community, and your individual best management practice or your stormwater management practice is simply getting back to the same level of drainage that you would have had if you hadn't built anything, and then your tax would still be the same. So it is, I mean, you should make your inquiry, but my guess is it's gonna come out as paving a road, like, is the township paying for that bridge at Paper Mill, by the way? Who's paying?
No, that's a county bridge.
That's a county bridge, but most people in the county aren't gonna be
Yeah.
using
very
that
few
bridge,
number,
but we're
actually,
all.
very few number of residents are using that, right? I think there's 3 houses on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, and I walk across it maybe to get to the
Yeah.
park, but most of the people in the county aren't paying. Everyone in the county is paying for that bridge. Most people aren't using.
Yeah, the proportionate use of that bridge is very low.
And the fact that, I've done anything on my property and another part of the township doesn't affect the bridge issue. I still have to pay for it.
No, I understand your concept. I just want to be clear to this group that there may be that's thrown in, and I just have to work through that.
All right, so I think we had just set the question as to whether or not we want to modify this or not. I sketched something out, but we can leave it as is. I just sketched out. Here you go. I got Alex looking all over me.
Well, I think that here's what I would say. If you are wanting to do that as you're wanting to do it as the finance committee, you would at least want to have agreement as a vote coming from here, going before the board, if that makes sense. Even if you want to say you're going to do it orally, then I would have that as a vote that that's what you're doing, because I want to make sure that what you present to the board comes from the finance committee as a
Yep.
group, and not just you as the chair of the finance committee saying something on the floor. I know that you guys discussed it and you're interested, but it would be good to have it on the record that that's what your decision was.
All right, what I said was, And again, this is verbiage to this extent, and I'd rather leave it as verbiage, oral verbiage, and not change this.
Okay,
Finance Committee recommends that the Board of Supervisors consider an outreach to all tax exempt property owners. Consider a contribution to this program as a valued member of our community.
Very nice.
it's actually a nice ad. It's a nice ad.
Any comments?
Fine with it.
All right, so then what I'll do, then when I get home, I'll throw this in after I get my bike ride today. I'll throw this in and I'll relay it back so that way it can go into the hopper. And I think we have a placeholder for the meeting on the 23rd.
I think that's correct.
I'll check with Suzanne just to make 100%.
We're voting on the 1 through 5.
That is
right now,
correct, with-
separately.
Correct. We're gonna vote on 1 through 5, but the final version that will go to the board will include number 6, as I've just orally communicated. It will be a listed item on this written document.
Wait a minute, we can vote on that part.
Okay.
So do we want to add a number 6? Do you want to say it orally?
Yes.
At the meeting? Or? do you
No, I
wanna-
want to put it in the document.
Do you vote for putting it in the document? Do you vote for putting it in?
Yeah, number 6 says.
The Finance Committee recommends that the Board of Supervisors consider an outreach to all tax exempt property owners who consider a contribution to this program as a valued member of our community.
So I make a motion that the Finance Committee accept the draft flood control funding proposal as written in items 1 through 5 and as just supplemented with item number 6 by member Nabholz.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Okay, I think we have a motion passed.
We did something in 2 years. The committee did something. Oh,
You'll be able
Well
to
done.
sleep tonight.
yeah. Fine with you.
Okay, any other old business? I see none on the agenda. I see no members of the community for public comment. Items for the next agenda. Could be for the next meeting, but. I guess we'll just, what we can have is a postmortem, because we'll present this at the October 23rd meeting. And we'll have a postmortem and pitchforks and torches will be left outside. Yeah, that's good. If that, I will call the meeting adjourned.